Okay, it's time. Hi, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you for joining today's session on the space-time scene analytics. And basically, I will leave the floor to Pete and Carsten very shortly after reminding you 3 points which may be to your interest. So if I start with the session material, basically, if you will be interested in downloading the slide set, know that I will share a link in the chat panel later on. So this link will take you to the SharePoint Online folder where you could find the slide set. And if you keep the link and come back tomorrow, you could also find the session recording at the same place. And know that if you keep a bookmark for the Get Ready to Sell archive, the link that I will share is already in the archive table, the slides as well. Then the second point is about earning credits. So for that, I will also remind you that you will be able to earn 1 credit point by attending this session. And to enable it, I will provide another link in the chat panel later on. So this link will take you to the CSOD system where you could register your attendance to earn 1 credit point. And also on the same page, you will notice an exam which is very short, very quick, and I would encourage you to take it just to test your learning from the session. So it will be very quick indeed. And know that if you are from CEO, you will be able to earn 1 additional credit point by passing the test. And basically, the credit system for the test is implemented only for the CEO employees. So anyone can take it. However, the credit earning is only for CEO. Then the third and the last reminder is if you will have questions about the content, please submit your questions in the Q&A panel, not in chat. It's not that easy to find questions in chat. You need to scroll up and down in searching for questions mixed up with different comments. So please post in the Q&A. Okay, Carsten, you have the ball. I will start recording, and please, the floor is yours now.
Thanks, Dana. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone, to this session today, which is a really focused one on railroad crossing safety solution based on space-time scene analytics. So it's me, Carsten. I'm heading the rail vertical within the transportation segment in Nokia Enterprise, together with Pete from the also Nokia Enterprise team, from the analytics team. So he's the product line manager for space-time scene analytics. So I will give it now a bit of a start, also introduce a bit the topic to you, and then Pete will take over in about a quarter of an hour to go in more deep dive. So let's get started. If it moves, yes. So the ones of you who are listening more often to me, they know already probably that slide. I just want to give a bit of a pointer where we are today with this topic we are talking in the next 1 hour. So here you see a couple of topics. So these are the main topics Nokia is driving right now. So not all of them exclusively, but these are the main drivers around digitalization and the future of railways, which we are pushing ahead. And as you can see here on the right, there's also 1 box around IoT analytics for rail operations and everything we are doing there. And that's where we put a bit of a focus here today, and especially on a single use case. But all the other topics, you saw already other training sessions and/or others will come up. To get a bit, let's say, even more down from this box, when we talk about analytics and IoT in rail, we focus clearly on this part you see here above the network. So our daily bread and butter business in Nokia is for sure networking and selling networking equipment and solutions. And we decided a while ago, especially after the acquisition of space-time about 2 years back, that we need to focus especially in this area on the analytics. So what to do the best with the data, how to exploit to a maximum the data, if they are coming from sensors, as you see here, or from cameras, as we will talk today about, which is in fact treated like a sensor, and to really use to a maximum the information we get out of the all of the sensors and data we can get collected over the network. And when we look a bit end-to-end, you see here, so we are usually dealing then when we do end-to-end with sensors, with the connectivity to connect the sensors and cameras and so forth. Sometimes we have to deal also with IoT platform like Impact, and then on top of it, the cybersecurity around, and then the analytics on top. And as you see on the left side, we are in railway. We are mainly focusing on two areas of use cases which we drive to the customer. The one is about predictive maintenance, trackside. So that's the case where we deploy sensors along the track, temperature sensors, or at the catenary line, collect the data and do analytics on top to predict potential errors and failures in the future. And the second one is based on thin analytics, which is a specific use case then implemented on thin analytics, which is railroad crossing safety. And this one we will focus today about. So just here, there's somebody has a problem with the audio. I hope you all can hear me. Wait, okay. So when we look a bit about the, let's say, the one-slider elevator pitch for this solution about railway crossing safety, I don't think we need to talk that there is a pain. So there is, I guess every one of you knows that wherever you are in the world, there are still accidents happening where people are injured at rail crossings or even killed in whatever country. It's everywhere, and it's still an issue. Still today, in the year 2020, there are cameras everywhere. We have a lot of gated crossings. There are really few ungated crossings, but still there is a lot of accidents happening. The solution we are working on, or we are proposing and bringing to the client, is based on using camera streams, so CCTV streams, feeds from the cameras which are there at the crossings, and then apply machine learning on top of it, based on our thin analytics solution, and then to identify when the gate, for instance, is going down, if there is any anomaly happening, like somebody is crossing, walking over the rail track while the barrier is closed, or a car is crossing, or a motorcycle, or whatever. So we immediately will see this and can flag it up to the operational guys from the railway so that they can trigger any countermeasures, or and this will be, and Pete will explain it in more detail later. This, of course, is customer by customer differently than how they will make use of those warnings and flags. Well, the investment varies, of course. So in many cases, there are already cameras existing which we just can use, and just can use the stream of the camera which is already there. So we just need some subscription-based software to perform the analytics, which can be done on-premise, in the cloud, or hybrid, so whatever the customer likes the most. The value is pretty clear. Increasing safety is for nearly every rail operator in the world priority number one. Increasing safety for passengers and increase the safety along the track. So that's clearly a priority, and we don't have to argue if this is important or not. It's still urgent because still accidents happen, and every accident happening and every person killed somewhere in the world is one too much. So it's still a topic, or is it a topic where our rail clients should invest, and better yesterday than tomorrow, in order to avoid accidents, or to reduce the number of accidents at least. Last point about trust. So the base technology, or let's start the sentence the other way around. So the use case itself, and Pete will go into the detail. We have not yet many references, so we have a really good one now in Japan. We are in discussion at a couple of other operators. But the base technology, which is behind this use case, in analytics, has been deployed over multiple cases across all the world for different use cases, and then also Pete will give an overview at the end of the presentation. As I said, there are still accidents happening. We all know it. We just found numbers now for US. If any one of you also find numbers for other parts of the world, we didn't find in fast or so easy the numbers. But just to give you a bit of an indication, and it will be similar in the rest of the world. So this is for US, and as you can see, on an average over 10 years, we had about 2,000 accidents, but still with 250 dead people. And the more worrying is, so just in 18, there have been more than 300 accidents just by ignoring the gate. So gate is going down. People just ignoring are more clever than the technology and just walking or driving or whatever over the track. And the final wonderful result is that 99 people got killed by it. So that's clearly something we want to reduce to zero with our solution, hopefully. So coming to the how. As most of you probably know, and I indicated it in my very first slide, we do quite a lot in railway. In Nokia, since many years, since about 30 years, we are active in railway. Starting, of course, with connectivity, with GSMR networks for mainline rail, mainly. We started in Nokia to carry signaling, but we do a lot, you saw it. And so we have many customers all over the world, far above 100 customers we serve today with different rail, let's say, solutions. Very often, of course, connectivity solutions, so IP networks, GSMR networks, 4G, future 5G networks, but also cybersecurity and IoT. So we do many things with our clients. And the good thing is we have a good customer base. So when we want to approach now, especially with this solution, now the market, we can use many of our clients and friendly customers to approach first and to try to get more traction on the market and to win references. That's what I think what we really need is to win as fast as possible now more references, because the solution is pretty good. We have really good results from the first trial we did, and we want to push it now to the market, and we are in discussion. And I asked you guys, which are now on the call, and many of you are in the customer teams dealing with those clients. We have very often meetings with our clients also on the future of rail and what is new and all these things. So we should try to push this use case to our market and not just rely on the sales force of the analytics team, the few people we have there doing sales and pre-sales, but also use our customer teams in the transportation segment or serving the transportation segment and railway in order to push to the market. That's a message really I want to push to you guys and to help us to get this flying. So last slide for me, then I will switch over to Pete. A bit about the go-to-market. It's pretty easy, just two ways. So either the direct approach, direct touch. So what I just said, talk to our with our customer teams, with our help from the segment, with the help from the pre-sales from the analytics team, and try to get to the operations team there and to convince them about our solution. The alternative way, additionally, not alternative, but additionally, we are preparing the indirect approach. This means especially we started to talk now with rail crossing vendors, so those companies which are building and deploying such rail crossing systems for the railway operators. There are some few really big ones. So we start now with one and discuss with them how we could fit even maybe into their portfolio to use them as a channel, so the backpack on top of them. So we are in early stages on this, but we will also push, let's say, this way now massively in the next couple of weeks and months, because we believe that's also a brilliant way to get on top directly from the start when new crossings are built or maintained, to bring our solution on top of it and to add to existing other solutions. What are the customers challenged with? Well, as I said, safety, 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 safety. That's number one plus star priority, and it's far more important than savings in OPEX and whatever. So safety is a really important topic. And also, it's of a huge benefit for us that we can use existing hardware and software investments already done at crossing, like CCTV cameras and the connectivity them to the backend, that maybe the streams are already transmitted through wireless or IP networks into the operation center, and we can just backpack our solution on top of it, and the investment is on top is then quite minimal. Yes, and at the end of the day, we want to be more effective in the safety and security region here, and to let our operators behave in more real time, and hopefully to reduce the number of accidents. And with this, I will hand over now to my colleague Pete to go into more detail.
So, thank you, Karsten. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to take you through just a couple of slides here, then we're going to start getting into the solution itself, around the structure of the solution, the reasons why the solution is important, etc., just to build on some of Karsten's comments earlier. So when you go into a customer, to a rail customer, what are some of the questions you may ask this customer? Excuse me. From a technical perspective and business perspective, from a technical perspective, you may ask them, what kind of safety measures do they already have in place at the crossings? And there are other methods that can be utilized within rail crossing safety areas to indicate when something is going on in the rail. So understanding what those systems are is quite key. Do you have gated crossings? That's a big one. So in most longer haul rail and even municipal rail, you've got certain areas that are gated and other areas that are not gated. This solution is really geared towards gated crossings as it is today. What kind of scenes do you have in mind? And this is an important question because that may also indicate where cameras need to be placed, where there might be lighting conditions that need to be accommodated for. Even sometimes the number of cameras at each gate crossing can be determined based on what this environment looks like. Of the gated crossings, are they IP cameras in place already, or do you need them? Are they PTZ based, pan tilt zoom, sorry, and how many of them are fixed? And I'll get into that a little bit later around why there is a difference between the two and how we address that. Do you also have any other IoT sensors in mind that you want to interface with, let's say, that are looking at, let's say, track conditions, tire conditions and squealing of tires on the train itself because of the condition of the wheels? Also, a real important question to ask is, if you have a gate crossing system, who may be that vendor that is supplying that to you? And I'll get into that as we move on here. As we talked about before, how are the IP cameras being used? Are they being used in a way to do some monitoring or perimeter monitoring? Are there any in place to begin with, like I talked about a little bit earlier? And how are the cameras connected? This is really key because this can determine the number of scene analytics gateways, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that might need to be deployed across the network itself. If they're all connected via some sort of a LAN connection, that there's a lot of advantageous aspects around that. But even if they're kind of disconnected a little bit, we can also accommodate for that. So from a business perspective, this is a pretty general question, but what are the industry trends that you're looking at? And industry trends may be even, number of deaths, as Carson talked about, number of injuries, damage to equipment, these type of things. and how serious is this in impacting your business? Because it's all really around looking at, for each rail customer, looking at how these incidences impact their business. We believe it's pretty much universal or worldwide that it's going to impact it in some way or another. But we also have to demonstrate to the customer, why is it advantageous to put these type of systems in place? Are humans involved? Are humans involved in looking at the camera footage, and what's the how many people, as an example, are involved in doing that and monitoring these situations? Do you have a response to instances in real time? So that kind of goes to the last point where we talk about having humans involved in the determination. Humans generally are not real time. They're not. There is some sort of a delay, and there may be multiple screens that they're looking at simultaneously, which we've seen in other security type situations and safety type situations. How do you respond to the instances today? And this is kind of a twofold question. The first is, are you doing manual? Let's say, are you sending people to an area once you determine that there's an issue that's going on or may occur? And also, what are those systems that we may need to interface with, operation systems that are those, let's say, single pane of glass or operation systems that are in place? Real quickly, what are the resources that we have in place to be able to support you in these endeavors? We have our product sales group within the Analytics and IoT group in Nokia Enterprise, and as they are listed here today, we have our heads of sales in our regions, as well as our head of partner sales, Tony. Product management, Nasser Ali, who's also a panelist here on this call, he heads up our product management group within Analytics and IoT. I'm the product manager, as Carson had indicated, for Scene Analytics for the product. And I would encourage you, please, anytime you have a question, I'll be more than happy to try to answer that question and support your sales efforts in any way possible. Our product owner, Hari Rao, our product marketing person, Dana, who is also on the panel and will be answering some of your questions here. She's always a savior for me. And then our global head of solutions and pre-sales, Kenny Karahawa. We also work closely. Obviously, Carson and I are doing this GRTS together. We work very, very closely with the segments because we want to be in lockstep about producing the material and providing the support that you need to understand the solution and to be able to position the solution. On the right-hand side are a number of resources, and we're also continuing to increase those resources. Been working very closely with Carson on putting together other material that will also provide further enablement. So what is the product and solution? So just from a very, very high level perspective, here are the layers of Nokia type of solutions from networking to applications, to our application services and some of the products that are part of our application services portfolio within the Analytics and IoT solution. So generally, from a space-time perspective, we sit there's two major components to Scene Analytics. The first one is the gateway edge component, which is a piece of software that sits out on the edge on standard x86-based hardware. That does all the processing of data coming in from video feeds and video streams. We also can interface with external sensors to provide a more robust event notification and more robust data around those events. Then that information is sent to the Scene Analytics server, which is responsible for the API layer. It's responsible for the user interface from both a operator perspective and administrative perspective. And this information can also be fed into the analytics, into the application services layer. So the application services layer can provide much more robust analytics and trending and predictive analytics and such. We're looking strictly here from a scene analytics perspective. The 90% of what we're looking at is really based on the event itself. We're trying to determine the event based on the video feed that we're getting in that might be abnormal to a usual situation. Again, we talk about layers of data. Of course, data is the key to any analytics platform. So this can be the process of a few different things. It could be the enterprise data that's already in place and operational data, which may be in the form of many. It could be in many different forms. It could be in a database. It could even be in a spreadsheet, as we've seen in certain industries. And then external data associated with IoT sensors and video and those type of things that can be brought into the platforms. Scene analytics will play in this diagnostics analytics piece, because what we're looking at is event detection related to video and other events coming off of IoT sensors. So we're playing in this area where we're determining what is an event and then raising that event to within our own system as well as an external system or an upstream system. Then once you start getting into the upstream systems such as application services, you can do more predictive trending analytics based and prescriptive analytics. So we're not, from a scene analytics perspective, really looking at that predictive aspect. That's a higher layer within application services and other external systems. Very quickly, so we look at video feeds, excuse me. We look at the cameras as IoT sensors. Just as an IoT sensor may indicate when a specific sound is heard, like a crash or glass breakage or something of that nature, we're looking at that camera as input, and then we take that input and we determine if there's events associated with that camera input, that camera stream. So we'll get into this a little bit when we get into the actual rail solution, but we're using a combination of unassisted machine learning and that's basically unsupervised machine learning as well as supervised learning to determine when events are taking place on the rail track itself. And I'll get into that a little bit further. We're also enriching that data by taking a signal, by interfacing with the rail crossing signaling system to understand when the gate is up or down, because the determination of an event is really based on when the gates are down. Obviously if gates are up and you're allowing vehicles, people to cross over that, over these rail tracks, we don't really need to determine if there's an event associated with that. It's really when that rail crossing gate is down. So that interface to that crossing gate system is really key to this use case. So one of the benefits related to the rail crossing safety solution. So we've been working with Daku in Japan. They're a private railway in Japan, very closely, probably for about the last 6 months or so, and have run through a first phase of a POC and planning for a second phase of a POC that will expand the use cases as well as the locations. And what they saw was that they had a challenge with a number of things, and we're trying to, of course, address that challenge. The first one, as Karsten said, it's safety. It's all about safety, safety, safety. Nobody wants to see somebody get injured or killed, as well as the fact that people can be injured and killed not only on the track, but on the train itself. So if a train has a collision with a vehicle, then there could be damage to the train. There could be injury and death to people on the train itself, as well as damage to the asset, as we talked about the train or the tracks. in addition to this, we have to think about how these incidences could also affect scheduling, arrivals, departures, these type of things, and what that costs the customer related to our customer related to that, to those events taking place. What we've also noticed is that we always think about people ignoring gates. That isn't always the case that people are ignoring a gate being down. There are times that people are literally just unaware. They may have some physical limitation, let's say they're hard of hearing or something. They go to an area, there is really no notification except the fact that, they see that maybe the gate is coming down, but they're slow to get across the track. We actually saw this in a situation when we were doing a midnight type of test with a docu, where people were just really literally seemed to be oblivious or unaware of what was going on. So that's something we also have to take into consideration. It's the ignore part of it, and it's also the unawareness. So from a solution perspective, we use out-of-the-box algorithms that we have in place already. That consists of two different algorithm types. One is the unsupervised learning Bell Labs algorithm that looks at motion, and it determines normal motion in the location over a period of time, and it continues to learn how that motion changes to set new baselines. And when that motion is different than the baseline, then events can be determined on that based on that motion. That could be if somebody is running quickly across something or very slowly across something, more than the norm. If the direction of somebody is going might be different. Let's say, as an example, you expect vehicles and people to cross the tracks, but you see people walking down the middle of a track. That could be an indication that they're not going the right way, and it could cause an incident. But also dwelling, so somebody walks onto the track and they just stop, or an object's on the track that just stops, as well as the density of an object. This is all based on motion and pixels. It's not really looking at a specific object type. Now, what we can do then is feed this motion, these motion events, to an actual object detection, which is also an out-of-the-box algorithm that we have that allows you to understand specifically what that object is. So in a docu's case, they want to know about specific objects, the specific things taking place. So they want to know if a person's on the track, if an animal's on the track, if a vehicle's on the track. They've also talked about specific animal types like deer as an object. They've also mentioned to us, and we're looking at this for this second phase of the POC, somebody laying down on the track or an indication of somebody laying down on the track. So that is, the object detection we have in place is very flexible. We have a list of objects already within our object database, but we have a bring your own object structure that allows you to bring new objects in on board. And what we found is that parts of the world and areas of the world or locations may, as an example, have a different indication of what is an important animal to look at versus another location. Let's say bear might be more prevalent in one area versus deer as an example. We also then can take this information and we can customize or configure what kind of a message comes out when an event takes place. So that's very particular to what the customer may want to see. So we have the ability to be able to do that. What are the benefits here? We have found that our solution is significantly more cost-effective than an existing solution that a docu has in place right now. They use a 3D LiDAR system that they've been using for a while, and it is an effective system. But we found that we compare very, very favorably against this LiDAR system, and we actually have caught real events that the LiDAR system has missed. And we're doing this at a fraction of the price per rail crossing. The ability to transmit the real-time alerts to an operation center of some sort, and it is, as Carsten said, it's very key to understand the operation centers that the rail systems have in place, because we expect that there's some master operation system or single pane of glass that they probably have that they're looking at. we want to be able to adapt to that very quickly. We don't want them to have to change their whole operations process to introduce our solution into it. And then understanding the trends in the activity. You see more, let's say, deer at certain times of the day than you do other times. How can you accommodate for this? How can you put additional signage up? Not necessarily signage for the deer to look at, but for people to be aware of and train operators to be aware of as an example. And we work basically with virtually any IP camera. So we want to try to utilize that structure that we have in place, or their structure, I should say, that they have in place, as much as we possibly can. Sometimes it takes adjustment of that camera to make sure angles are correct and lighting conditions are correct, but we want to be able to utilize their existing infrastructure as much as we can. We can help them procure new infrastructure, but we want to, again, make this as cost effective as possible. From the flow perspective, let me just take you through this hopefully really quickly. This is a very important slide. I would look at this as a really nice reference slide, though, for your future use. So if you look at the bottom aspects where we talk about the number one, so there's two things that we do within Scene Analytics within that Scene Analytics gateway. The first is that we have a plugin that is basically communicating with the rail crossing system to understand when the gate is up and when the gate is down. Now, what we can put within that plugin is, first of all, the communications method. We have to understand what protocols and such that are being utilized for that communication. But we also have the ability to put in delay time. So as an example, we may get a signal from the gate that says, I am now starting to close, but until it's completely closed, that may be another X amount of seconds. So we have the ability within this plugin to configure what that time might be. We also have the ability within the plugin to determine and to configure what that message will be, the overall message if an event has occurred. The second part of this is once that gate is down, we then start doing the monitoring of the area using a virtual polygon fence that we defined within the Scene Analytics UI around the area of interest. And what we do then is we look at the using unsupervised learning as well as the supervised object detection, what might be occurring on that rail crossing once those gates are down. So they're working in tandem. We're not going to look for monitoring things when the gates are up, because that may be irrelevant and it may provide false positive alerts, which most customers are very concerned with. You ask a lot of customers, they're more concerned about getting too many false positives than they are about anything else, because it just becomes the crying wolf type of scenario where you don't really know what to pay attention to and what you should pay attention to. So once those events are determined and all this processing is done in the gateway, we're then only sending metadata up regarding the event, such as date and time, the camera location, the event type itself, and a short video clip associated with the event. That will be sent to the Scene Analytics server. And the Scene Analytics server will then allow you to expose this data. Number one, you'll be able to see it within the Scene Analytics UI from an operations perspective. So we'll show all the events that come in and the details of those events. And then we could also expose all that data to another upstream system via the API set that we have within the Scene Analytics server. So that's from a process perspective. That's what we do. And again, I look at this as a very nice reference slide to understand how we actually use this process. Very quickly, I've already talked about quite a bit of this on the last slide, but Scene Analytics is broken down into two major components. The first is the gateway, where all the processing takes place, and that generally is sitting on the edge because we want to be as close to the source of the data as possible to limit bandwidth needed. As video, it takes significant amounts of bandwidth as well as the amount of data that's produced. So then what we'll do is take all of this processing and the results of all that processing, and we'll send up any of the events to the Scene Analytics server, which again can be exposed via API, all this data to other upstream systems. Plugin capability for the rail gate system. This is obviously key to this use case, is understanding when that gate is up or it's down. So what we've done within our structure is we allow, without any core code change whatsoever, is to bring in plugins utilizing a bring your own algorithm structure. And algorithm can be for a completely new algorithm, or it can be basically for an interface, a simple interface to an external data source. That could be another IoT sensor, or in this case, the gate crossing system. So our goal long term, excuse me, is to build up a library of these plugins associated with the major gate crossing systems. But as we sit right now, we've worked with a docu putting this plugin together, which is very configurable, and this can be adapted to other crossing systems once we understand what those crossing systems, communications methods are, and in the way that they work. And this is generally today done via a professional services effort. We talked about edge processing already. It's key that we're close to these to the actual sources of data. And when I had mentioned earlier about the LAN versus WAN connectivity within the rail system itself, as an example with a docu, they all basically have the whole rail system connected together. So the idea there is that we're going to try to put a limited amount of gateways to support the, let's say, 200 to 400 cameras that may be required for a docu. So if they have a complete interconnect, we can put multiple gateways cameras per gateway. If they're disconnected, then generally you have to have a gateway per location. So that's another very key question to talk to your customer about, is how they have their system network together. That way we can get a better determination on the number of the amount of gateway software needed, as well as the number of physical hardware gateways that we have. The other thing we're working very closely with is we're working closely with the NDAC team. Scene Analytics is now available the Scene Analytics Gateway is now available as an NDAC application. So if we can, as an example, utilize the NDAC Edge and enable the Scene Analytics Gateway application, that may also cut down on the amount of hardware that's needed to put the solution in place. We talked about common object detection, and we also talked about this string that I have down here of understanding when motion occurs, and then looking at things from a unsupervised learning perspective, and then determining if there's an anomaly itself, and then piping that using pipelining methods that we have built into the product using worldwide streams to a supervised learning algorithm, in this case, object detection. So what this allows you is lower processing needs to determine when an event has taken place, to then feed this to, I'll call it, a little bit more expensive processing, because it requires, in a lot of cases, it requires higher processing and possibly GPU capabilities on the gateway to determine specifically what object you're looking for. So really, in reality, if all you're looking for is changes in motion and you don't really care what the object itself is, you can really stop right here if you really wanted to. What we found for a docu, and what you'll probably see in many cases, is that they also want to know the specific objects that are in play to determine those specific objects that they look at is more critical to indicate. The competitive landscape, sorry. So we have VMS vendors, and there's VMS vendors all over the place. VMS vendors do a wonderful job at collecting vast amounts of video, being able to search back on dates and times and points of time on that video allows for notifications to external systems around some of the search capabilities and such. And what they'll generally do is they don't have really a lot of built-in analytics. They generally will third party to another analytics company to bring in the analytics piece, like as we play. But that competition is out there, and you'll see if you look at a Genetech as an example, they also will third party other vendors to provide some of the analytics capabilities. The second one is the intelligent video analytics software. So in the case of the Docu, as we talked about, we were looking at this 3D LiDAR system that we've kind of have gone into like a bake-off with, which we performed very, very well against. Again, as I mentioned before, we not only performed well, we also, against them, we also provided, or we saw events that they did not see. But they generally have they generally lack a bring your own algorithm type of structure. So we have algorithms out of the box of scene analytics, but we also have this bring your own algorithm structure that allows us to be flexible to bring new algorithms onto the system if they're open source, if they're developed by another Nokia, a Nokia group such as Bell Labs or Nokia Tech, if they're developed by the customer who has a data science team. And then we can actually take these algorithms and use WWS, worldwide stream pipelining, to string logic together to provide, again, more intelligent determination of what's going on within an event. The public clouds and open source frameworks. So the Azures, the AWSs, the Googles of the world have a lot of really nice algorithms that they've created that you have the ability to utilize via making API calls, but they don't really have a platform. They basically have the algorithms themselves, what they open up for applications to API into. So we've actually done this ourselves within Scene Analytics for other use cases where we've utilized these open source or these as an example an Azure algorithm, but they don't have a platform that they create our pipelining methods and such as we do. And then the manufacturers of rail equipment. In this case, we're actually starting to try to work with these rail equipment manufacturers so we can partner with them to bring on scene analytics as part of the solution. Many of these manufacturers really don't have an analytics solution. They may have the actually infrastructure pieces, and we're working very closely with Karsten and in the segment team to determine who might be these best manufacturers to try to partner with. The license, from a license perspective, what we do within Scene Analytics is we already talked about that gateway server component. So from our standard licensing structure, we have two major pieces, which are the algorithm bundles, which we price on a per camera basis, and we have the server instance, which is either priced on a per camera basis instance, a per camera basis if you're using a multi-tenant Nokia hosted instance, or on a per instance basis if the customer wants or a partner wants a standalone instance on their own, either on the cloud or on premise. The algorithm bundle that we suggest for the rail crossing safety use case is a security and safety algorithm bundle. So that contains all of the algorithms needed for this use case. And in the meantime, we also have the plugin level of effort that generally is a PS, a professional services level of effort that's provided by our analytics and IoT group currently. But we also utilize, again, a bring your own algorithm structure where we can train other people up and other groups within Nokia or outside of Nokia to provide their own, to have their own enablement to do so. So why do we use Nokia Spacetime Scene Analytics for rail crossing safety, and why do we encourage it, and why are we asking you to look at this as a very, very serious very, very serious solution for a very, very serious problem. Of course, it's all about safety, as Carsten said. Having people injured or killed is things that everybody wants to avoid. Also, again, as I mentioned before, understanding how cost of assets being damaged is also a key use case in putting these type of systems together. Again, what I also want to talk about is that, from a real-time alerting perspective, it's all built in within Scene Analytics. So we're looking at data as it comes in real time. We're processing that data, and we're providing very low latency event notifications. It's a very cost-effective solution because we're utilizing existing infrastructure and relatively low-cost cameras versus some other solutions that are very technologically, maybe very technologically sound, but also can be very expensive on a per rail gate crossing aspect. The ability to improve planning, to understand what instances are going on at what points in time, to provide, let's say, better signage for pedestrians and for vehicles, and understanding these trends in specific areas like what type of animals may be present is an example, and how do you deter those animals from being on the track by whatever means that might be. And from an operations flexibility perspective, the ability to interface with any operation system via our API set. This is to be real quick. We've deployed Scene Analytics in many POCs. We have existing partners that we're working with very, very closely in a multitude of different use cases. This is our first rail POC that we've done with the docu, but we're in some serious discussions with a couple of other rail customers in Europe right now. So again, I would encourage you to, any specific information you need more about this use case, please feel free to reach out. But we've also used Scene Analytics in many other different instances, from manufacturing to smart cities to road planning in other activities, port monitoring, etc. And this is just the information to go to, how to register for your credits. And I want to say thank you very much. I know we only have a few minutes left. I want to thank you very much for your audience, and we'll throw it over to Q&A now, please. Dana?
Sorry, I had trouble unmuting my phone. Okay, we have a lot of questions that have been answered, but there's a few worth bringing up here again. One of them has to do with the Scene Analytics Gateway, and so where is that normally placed in this type of an architecture?
It will be placed in certain cases, like with the docu, they have basically an operations center that they would be placing the gateway or gateways in. And these can be, that's generally what we see, is there's some operations center around where they would be placed. And again, what we're trying to get to is a multitude of cameras per gateway type of a scenario. We can also put smaller gateways, and they can even be hardened gateways in let's say outside facilities. But really, then the scalability aspect needs to be talked about, because if you're doing, let's say, a one gateway per one camera type of a scenario, that's not as cost effective, of course, as doing multiple gateways per multiple cameras per gateway. Sorry.
Okay. So the monitoring starts when the gate goes down. What happens if the gate doesn't go down?
Then the monitoring in this case will not occur. Is an example. Is the question more related to if there's a problem with the gate going down, or is it more of if just the gate isn't down at all? So it's kind of two.
Are there any provisions we could put in place, like with the solution, to like identify if the gate isn't working or anything like that, or that's not part of the solution?
It's not part of the solution. Yes,
I think if
I
the
think-
gate is not, I think if the gate is not working, then there should be a trigger, alarm, flag, or whatever, but the rail crossing system itself is independent of our solution, which is on top. If it is not working properly. So if there is an alarm, if not, then the operator anyway has a problem, that he has problems at the rail crossing and don't know it. But we might even be able to detect that a train is passing and the rail crossing is not going down. Might be a case to investigate.
Yeah, one of the other things that just kind of popped into my head was if we know that the if the gate is having a problem, there could be an indication, there could be some sort of a notification sent to the Scene Analytics plugin to notify Scene Analytics that there is an issue and even tag that issue. But of course, as you said, Karsten, if there is a problem, I assume that there's some other safety mechanisms they have in place within the crossing system itself that would indicate that.
Okay. Does the algorithm detect a suicidal person lingering at a crossing for hours and waiting for the train to come?
We could do that. We could use as an example. Luckily, we haven't tested that scenario, or with a real scenario. But if you use the dwell condition, we can tune the dwell motion condition to say, let's say as an example, let's say you have a crossing gate and it's a very remote area, but there is a crossing gate there, so you don't see a lot of activity going on in that gate. There's two ways we can actually look at it. We can take, if it's a remote area, we could look at motion over a period of time on the track to say, okay, this obviously is not correct. We generally do not see somebody dwelling on a rail track for more than 30 seconds or whatever it happens to be, right? If it's greater than 30 seconds, let's raise an alarm. The other way we could do this is that when, and we're in the process of putting this into the product, is tracking each individual object that comes into an area from the time it leaves the polygon area to the time it enters to the time it leaves. So if you see that object has not left within a specific period of time, we also will be able to raise an alarm based on that too. So yes, I see that as very, very possible.
Okay, so here's another question. So this analytics tool / solution can be deployed for railway customers who are going to deploy a 5G-based system. Is it not possible through old GSMR?
Let me take that one.
Yeah, please.
So it's completely independent. So just to be, maybe we made it not clear enough, but so that's why the question is pretty good. We are completely independent here of GSMR or FRMCS, so 5G-based communication in future, or for metro, CBTC networks. The cameras are there, they are connected, not through GSMR. Maybe in future, if there is a 5G network, you can use a slice of a 5G network to also connect trackside equipment, not just ETCS and CBTC and whatever. But in fact, we don't interact with GSMR or in future FRMCS networks at the moment as the solution is set up. It's really an independent plug-on on cameras which are there, or cameras we need to install, which are then connected either through IP networks, through fibers, or IP networks which are already along the track, or through 4 5G networks from carriers or private networks, NDAC-based, for instance. So it's independent. I want to really make this clear of GSMR / FRMCS in future.
Yeah, as you said, Karsten, it's we are independent of the connectivity method. We're obviously working very closely with the NDAC group as well as our MN to as video is a very big use case related to 5G connectivity. But we're not dependent on it.
So we only have a minute left, and we have one more question that hasn't been answered, either written or asked here, and I think it's a pretty good one. Do we make any commitments to reliability or false positives?
We don't have any specific benchmarks set up today. What I will tell you is that in our POC with the docu, we were getting over 90% true positives. So that, I think it was about 92% if I look at the metrics that were measured. That is something that when we go through these testing processes, that will be more well documented. Scene analytics, of course, can play in a multitude of ways. So this reliability, this false positive and true positive determination is a very important question, and we're enhancing our information to be able to provide that.
And maybe also to add on top, we are not going to replace any existing safety measures at crossings from safety vendors and so on. What we want to do is to add just one more level to increase the potential to detect any issue.
Good point.
Okay, well, I think we covered most of the questions, and we'll also send out the answers in writing to everybody who participated. So I think that's it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to all of you for all the valuable information you provided. And thanks a lot to all our attendees for being here. I will provide the session recording at the same location where the slides are, and that will be tomorrow. So have a good day all, and I hope to see you all at the future session. So goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.